All right, welcome again to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. No white lightning for me because I haven't worked out yet today. So, that's fine though, because I don't need any help getting through these chapters because these next three at least are, I feel like I say this a lot, but these are some of my favorite scenes in the whole series. Um, when Matt gets to Salidar, uh, you get you get a lot of meat. This is a very hearty chapter, because you get a lot of good characterization of Matt, of Aviendha, of Elayne, of Nynaeve, of Egwene, and then good old Thom comes back in, and we get to have a great moment with Thom.
And I forgot I have a meme just for this situation. So we've got our cover photo.
Um, oh, and Vannon, we get another great moment of Vannon, of oh, okay. So, tis true. Uh, good old Vannon who sits on his horse like a sack of lard and yet is so nondescript that he can sneak past warders twice. Uh, whereas the other scouts get nabbed. Um, I I I love the setup here, and I think it's on purpose because everything is that we start out seeing Matt in charge, and in some ways it's very un-Matt-like. We've talked about this before of it's seemingly against his character, but not really if you go a little deeper into uh into why he's the jokester and the trickster, the prankster.
Well, I think something that when people kind of straw man Matt, they forget is he knows how to turn it on and off. And that was one thing. That was one of the things that makes him Matt is he
Hmm.
he can do the thing when the thing needs doing. He
Yes.
just doesn't want to do the thing.
And he can use those seemingly contradictory personality traits to his advantage in these situations. That's why we spent a fair amount of time on that card game in the opening of the Shadow Rising, because that's him doing it. That's kind of one of his first, probably the first interaction we see with him with nobility, where he's suddenly not the farm kid anymore, that he kind of seamlessly fits right into their world, um, which sets up that he can seamlessly fit into this martial world where you have nobles and generals and lifelong military people who are deferring to him because he makes it work. Um, and then uh, skipping forward a little bit, he's he's going to kind of be the butt of the joke when he gets into Salidar, but it's not. One of the terrible things of why modern everything sucks is because thanks to the Me Too hysteria, every hero has to be a woman and every woman has to be a hero, but they have to be flawless heroes, which means that every time you want to build up a female character, you have to do it by crushing a male character.
Well, you
Me-
even see it in commercials.
mhm,
There's that commercial now where the lady picks up 5 glasses of beer and she's going through the bar and everybody's like, "Oh wow, well, that would be fine." Except they had to have the moment where she passes the guy with 2 glasses on a tray and he's like,
mhm,
"Whoa, whoa."
mhm,
It's
mhm.
like not only am I doing something awesome, which would have been fine, but
But I'm
but
emasculating this soy boy here.
yeah, well, and he was a soy boy. That's part of the problem. Maybe if you represent some real men in there, we would have a little bit more equality. But
And in this scene, you know, jumping forward to the end of this chapter and then into, the beginning of chapter 39, he's he's the butt of the joke, but it's because it's a comedy of errors. It's Matt is being Matt, uh, making assumptions, uh, taking charge, and he's he's wrong, but he's not stupidly wrong.
yeah, and realistically, the original wrong was Rand. He's kind of having to take things on the fly because Rand was wrong.
Exactly, exactly. And he actually is when he gets in there and thinks that Nynaeve, Elayne, and Egwene are in over their heads again, like to his point, he pulled them out of the dungeons of the stone, which yes, they were doing their own thing, but they still needed rescuing, you know. Uh, Again, both of them had their moment there that the girls were figuring out a way to um cunningly and with their powers get around the situation they were in, but they couldn't do it completely. They still needed Matt. But, kind of to their point, Matt has trouble grasping that
Had they
they're
not
not.
been doing that, there would have been a fully powerful Aes Sedai at the
Mhm.
front door when he broke in.
Exactly. That they're not damsels in distress.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he needs to help them. And they, to an extent recognize how useful he is. Then more comes later. But
Before and after for Wheel of Fortune, Robert Jordan Peterson. We need these two interlocking forces to work together.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So they both have, they all have their moments. So all of them, to some extent, kind of look foolish a little bit. Like when Elayne tries to channel at him and it doesn't do anything, or is it Nynaeve who tries to channel at him? Um, and then Nynaeve uh does what lets her temper get the best of her like she does, and acts childish when she's the oldest person in the room and literally kicks Matt in the butt. So they all get their moments, but they also all kind of have their foibles. And it elevates all of the characters at the same time. Nobody gets crushed here. So you don't leave thinking, boy, Matt's a dork. It is a masterclass in how you can um build multiple characters at once. You don't have to build at the expense of other characters.
So Matt had his fumble here, but let's go ahead and let's be fair and balanced. Let's go into the failures of the women here.
Hmm.
Egwene, Nynaeve, and Elayne, and everybody, but Egwene being the biggest culprit here, tries to take authority with her position of I'm Ireland now, and he doesn't believe her.
Hmm.
She doesn't take an understanding perspective of, oh yeah, I was just with him a day and a half ago in this other place. This is probably a really hard story to swallow. She just tries to say, no,
Hmm.
this is the way it is. You better listen to me, boy.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
she immediately takes on the tone
She
of
she takes offense at the fact that he doesn't believe her instead of trying to help him believe this really radical thing.
when he didn't act that much different with Swan Sanche, for crying out loud.
Mm-hmm.
Even her as Emerald, and he was still himself. He was a little more cautious because of her position, but he was still himself. This is who he is, and she knows that, but she immediately takes on that authoritarian tone,
Mm-hmm.
you
Which
know.
which is something to the extent of, I know this sounds crazy, but there's a lot of politics going on right now, and you
Hmm.
should understand that by now. And that might have been something to be like, well, I did just, take over a whole army in basically one battle because I was
Hmm.
trying to leave. So, you know, a little bit of an understanding tone could have gone a long way there. And then on his end, maybe trusting your friends, even how unbelievable the story is, giving it a second might have been a little bit better too. But
Yeah, but to
he is
his point,
reacting to Rand's fuck up. So
and to his and he makes the point though, uh, in his defense of, hey, if you wanted to be reasonable, if you wanted me to listen, then you shouldn't have started channeling at me.
this is also true. Yeah.
Um, and so that you know gets his ire as well. Um, okay, so 713 then is uh where they kind of box him in, it, or seemingly so, but Matt doesn't really. Matt is not one to be pinned down in multiple ways. Um, okay, so 713. Matt, Egwene said in a level tone. He did not stop. Matt, stop cutting a fool. You are in quite a predicament, but I should be able to get you out of it if you listen to reason. Finally, he halted. I am in a predicament. Egwene, you've jumped out of a tree toward a bear pit and you think everything is fine because you haven't landed yet. Um, blah, 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 blah. And she calls him, a general of Dragonsworn, which makes him highly offended. But he does get it. He gets what she's saying both ways. He gets that she's right in that the people in Salidar who don't know him and don't know Rand are just going to look at him as the same kind of dragon sworn rabble that are running amok all over Altera and Mirandi. He also gets that she's playing him, that she's trying to box him in to force him to do something, which he does not like. And as they kind of acknowledge, the only reason it works is because he made a promise. And that's a big effing deal to Matt. As they figure out after Matt leaves and they explain to Elayne, I think he promised Rand to stay by your side and see you safely delivered to Caemlyn. And he will not ever break a promise. But kind of point against them, then why are you boxing him in like he's some kind of stranger? Why are you playing politics with him like you do the Aes Sedai later? But to their credit, at least Elayne and Egwene, minor spoiler, we won't go into it. We'll get there when we get there. They do kind of have they do eventually have their eyes open and start to treat Matt less like a scoundrel and more like the person that he is.
Mm-hmm. I mean, at some point, something's got to break where everybody's got to understand where they actually stand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Matt's a scoundrel, but he's in charge of an army that
Mm-hmm.
the new upcoming emperor put a major task for.
Yep.
And then on the other end, once it's clear, oh, she actually is this. I can still think she's a puppet, but she actually is this thing she said she was.
Yep. Um, and that's where Thom comes in a minute. I do like as the chapter ends, you know, we see Egwene um playing Sheriam like a fiddle as well. Matt sees what Egwene is doing partly because he's savvy, partly because he knows Egwene, but probably most importantly because he doesn't have preconceived notions. Uh, Egwene is able to do this because n no none of the Aes Sedai expect it of her. So if you are locked in with blinders, and we've talked about how the Aes Sedai have tunnel vision so often, then you're just not even going to entertain the fact that this teenage girl who was just accepted a couple of days ago uh, is going to be able to. I mean, not just that this teenage girl who was accepted a couple of days ago isn't going to be able to play me, outwit me. You're probably thinking consciously or subconsciously that she wouldn't even have her own agenda because she doesn't know what to do. How can you have an agenda if you don't know anything? If you don't know how the world works, if you don't know what's what? So not only could she not play me because I'm an Aes Sedai and I've been one for decades, but this girl doesn't even know what's what. She wouldn't even know where to start if she wanted to play me. Okay. Any thoughts on that before we jump ahead? We're
Nope, I think you covered it.
zipping right along.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, but now chapter 40, a couple
Sorry, I got
of
a little
things
distracted
happen.
because we were talking about Matt, and I started going into the personality traits, and I did a little diagram for all three of the big guys.
Well, the personality traits, you may want to get into a little bit of that here because in chapter 40, the first half of chapter 40, uh, I love, and these are some of my favorite moments and stupid show. One of the things we ranted about so much is you need a teacher. Everyone needs a teacher. Everyone needs a mentor. Egwene had one, and they showed it in the freaking crappy show that Moiraine was introducing Egwene into the world of channeling and Aes Sedai-ness, and yet the boys never had their moment with Lan teaching them like they do in the books. And here again, you have another mentor figure, and it's someone who is incredibly world wise. He's been around the block more than a couple of times. And he knows Matt. He knows Matt personally, and he knows Matt's type. And we saw him back at the beginning of The Shadow Rising, kind of not playing Matt, but guiding Matt subtly. Of, let me pull out a stones board and a bottle of wine here, and we'll just chat, even though you're dead set on leaving. And he's doing it again here by trying to get Matt to see things from the girl's perspective. Because Thom understands, because he's been seeing it for months now, that not only are they capable, uh, both intellectually and because of the level of power they have, but what they are doing is very important. And maybe think about it from their perspective and then see what you can do, how you can add to that is basically what he's saying, rather than trying to steer them the way you want them to go. Figure out how you can best add to what they're trying to do, which is really important.
So Matt, it's easy what his probably biggest trait is probably openness, because that's usually associated with intelligence. He's very innovative. He can adapt to any situation. Uh, and probably next up would be extroversion. He seems to be an extroverted, very intelligent, open-minded person. That, and I have his lowest trait is probably agreeableness, which is where we differ, because my two highest are openness and agreeableness, which sometimes is good, sometimes is bad. All of these are sometimes good, sometimes bad. Where I struggle with the three guys is where they land on neuroticism, because it's not the same as conscientiousness. Like Matt would probably be very low in conscientiousness and actually a little bit higher in neuroticism, but that's kind of it's a what can go wrong. It's a Murphy's Law kind of attitude. And Matt really,
Hmm.
really kind of has that mentality with a lot of things. Whereas Perrin, conscientiousness is probably his biggest because he is a very methodical, organized person. He's probably the kind of person that if he lived nowadays, he would make lists. He would make packing lists. He would make vacation lists. He would plan things way in advance. He has his itinerary all lined up for the next day. But I think he's also high in openness. So he would make lists, but he's very innovative at the same time, and very highly intelligent as well. His lowest would probably be extroversion
Hmm.
because he wants to do that by himself or by himself with Fail. He doesn't want to be out there and in front of everybody. So
Hmm.
he needs his alone time to recharge. And Rand, conscientiousness and extroversion. So he's a little bit of both of them.
And his neuroticism is growing as the series goes.
Yes, but we have a metaphysical reason for that. So,
Yes. I
but
think you need to explain agreeableness a little bit more though, because um, the personality trait, and this is what is interesting to me about the personality trait and about Matt as an exemplar of it, is you would think, oh, he's agreeable because everyone likes him. He gets along with everybody. He can kind of seamlessly fit into a room and and be part of it. And everybody will kind of like him and let him join in their group wherever he goes. But that's not what agreeableness is.
no, that's charisma. There's a difference. He can get in with any party and flow with it, but he still does Matt,
Hmm.
which is again, there's good and bad to all of these. I'm high in agreeableness, but I'm really, as we do from our political uh, episodes, really anti-controllable. So that might be a nature nurture kind of thing, you
Hmm.
know. But agreeableness is tricky because it's not just you tend to be walked over a little bit when you're high in that. You tend to go with the flow a little bit more. It has nothing to do with charisma. Now it can be, and if it's so low, it could be a negative trait with when it comes to charisma because you're constantly battling people, even if they're in the right,
Hmm.
which he does with Egwene and stuff. You know what? I might change my mind on that one because he is so people who are high in agreeableness tend to be very disagreeable with people they're comfortable with. And he really doesn't fight with people over things,
And we
uh,
saw that
except for
with
except for
Rand.
Rand, Perrin,
Yeah.
Egwene, and Nynaeve.
And we spent quite a bit of time with when Rand was sending him on this little mission, and he was, now come on, Rand, now what about this? Now this is a, this and this, and finally he just mentally threw up his hands and rolled his eyes and realized that he's not going to budge, so fine, whatever.
But yeah, so I might switch that. His lowest trait might be conscientiousness. Agreeableness probably somewhere in the middle. But yeah, his openness and extroversion are why he's so charismatic. But he does tend to want to buck the trend, and he was the troublemaker with his parents and with the whole village, realistically. So he's not a rule follower, that's for sure. Uh, but yeah, I think just talking it out, I would put conscientiousness as his lowest because he's not a list maker. Even when he
Hmm.
has a plan, he doesn't make a
Hmm.
list. He just lets it flow.
He he has a set of kind of principles in his mind,
Hmm.
that are kind of his that are kind of the scaffolding that's always there, but then how the building gets built is going to be determined entirely by the circumstances.
Well, which is this is my training philosophy for myself. I know not everybody's like this. Some people are
Hmm.
the list makers, but I am the opposite of a list maker. Conscientiousness was not high on my personality traits. Uh, but the way to defend yourself against that is you just get so good at everything that anything can happen. And you don't have to, I need to do this and this and this and this and this because and then you study that it's like writing a script versus ad-libbing, so you just get so good at every technique that it doesn't matter what technique you need.
Hmm.
You're already ready.
Um, I had a thought there, and that actually fits in well with Tom's little story about trying to rescue a woman.
Mm.
Is he had it in his head that this is the way it was, and this woman needs to be rescued, and I'm gonna do it. And he
Well,
was completely blind to what was really going on there.
and it also that's where being low in that trait kind of gets you, is when you feel like something has to be done, you're actually probably pretty bad at that part of it. The
Hmm.
actual conscientious person would have been able to make the list in the proper way.
And this is where experience and wisdom comes into it, because as Tom said, this is when I was young, I had a bit of money, and now he's learned. Now he knows better. And
Mm-hmm.
this is how and why he's counseling Matt to, you know, but also it is an important part of it. So 727, um uh Tom, you have to help me. What? Tom broke in. So there he is again. He's still, he on some level he gets it. Uh he knows the point of that story. He knows the lesson of the parable that Tom is trying to teach him, but he's digging in his heels.
Mm-hmm.
Tom knows that because he knows Matt and he knows the type. And so he cuts him off. He's not going to let him dig in his heels. So what? Tom broke in, steal them away from the bootmaker? He blew up a streamer of blue smoke. I won't do that, boy. And then he's going to add on to it by making it personal because, again, he knows because he's seen it. He's seen Matt jump out of the hayloft. He's seen him go charging through the rain to rescue these three girls specifically. And one of the reasons I like this scene is because it's one of the very few times we actually see Tom being direct. You actually see just how much he knows just from simply observing and having casual conversation. And he lays it out um of uh and I like that he keeps every time Matt tries to dig in his heels, he keeps save her from the bootmaker, you mean? Tom murmured. Um that this is the stew that they're in. There are at least, there are this many factions that I know of, and I suspect there are more. So these are all the different directions that Egwene is being pulled in. And if if it's not played very delicately, then Egwene could get toppled, and then by extension, Elayne and Nynaeve, because they're connected to her. So you don't know the whole story, and you're being stubborn stupid. So look at the whole story and now think about it from their point of view, and now stop trying to rescue them from the bootmaker.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so at the bottom of 727 is, and this is where, you know, Rand really needs Tom back or someone like him, because he needs someone, and I guess we are actually going to get to that here in a second because that's chapter 41. Um, he he needs someone to say, um, what why are you treating Matt like you would any other general? And yeah, he kind of clenched his teeth and closed his eyes and kind of physically restrained himself and pulled back from from the yelling and commanding that he would have done with someone else, but that's still his instinct. And Thom just, finally kind of ends it here and blunts any more of Matt's uh arguments. You aren't a fool, Matt, Thom said quietly. You know better. Egwene, it's hard to think of that child as Amaryllis. Matt grunted sourly in agreement. Thom paid him no mind. Yet I believe she has the backbone for it. It's too early to say whether a few things are just happenstance, but I'm beginning to believe she may have the brains as well. The question is she tough enough? If she lacks that, they will eat her alive, backbone brains at all. Who will, Elaida? Oh, her. If she has the chance, that one lacks nothing for toughness. But the Aes Sedai right here hardly think of Egwene as Aes Sedai. Amaryllis maybe, but not Aes Sedai, hard as that is to believe. I don't understand, but it's true. The same for Elayne and Nynaeve. They try to keep it among themselves, but even Aes Sedai don't hide as much as they think. Not when you're Thom, anyway. So where is it? Yeah. So at the end of that paragraph is Egwene is walking the edge of a precipice, Matt, and three factions right here in Salidar, three that I'm sure of, might push her over if she makes one wrong step. Elayne will follow if that happens, and Nynaeve, or maybe they'll push them over first to pull her down. Right here in Salidar, Matt said, flat as a planed board. Thom nodded calmly, and Matt could not stop his voice from rising. And you want me to leave them here? I want you to stop thinking you're going to make them do anything. They've decided what they are going to do, and you can't change it. But maybe, just maybe, you can help me keep them alive. And then Vannon is awesome again. And that's how Matt's section ends is, oh, sure. I got away from hundreds of warders once before. I'll just do it again by strolling casually down the street.
And then we get to Elayne and Aviendha.
And I hadn't really considered it before. But these two scenes are part of the same chapter, not just because these are the events that are happening right now, but they kind of mirror each other. Of Aviendha has it in her head that this is what's going to happen and this is the way it has to be. And Elayne is, okay, no, this isn't how we do things. This isn't how I do things. If you've got one foot in our world now, so you've got to kind of learn how our world works. If because yes, Rand is the Karkarn, but he's also the Dragon Reborn. And if I'm near sister and maybe we're going to be first sisters, then you have to figure out how my world works. Um, um, there's a little scene with Birgit, but I think we'll wait for that for the great scene between her and Matt later.
Oh yeah.
To get more into her and what's going on with her and Elayne. Um, I like the okay, here we are. 7:35 is when she gets right to it. Um, Matt claims you have come here to kill me, Aviendha blinked. Wetlanders always put everything backwards, she said wonderingly. Laying the stick on the foot of Nynaeve's bed, she put the belt knife beside it carefully. My near sister Egwene asked me to watch Rand al'Thor for you, which I promised to do. Bundle and shawl went to the floor beside the door. I have tow toward her, but greater to you. Unlacing her blouse, she pulled it over her head, then pushed her shift to her waist. I love Rand al'Thor, and once I let myself lie with him. I have tow, and I ask that you help me meet it. Turning her back, she knelt in the small space available. You may use the stick or the knife as you wish. The tow is mine, but the choice is yours. Very matter of fact, because this is just whichever you choose, I accept. And I like that he makes it clear this is And because we've seen it before, this isn't bravado. This is just the way it is.
I like
Um,
that it did include in her thoughts that she twitched towards the knife.
yeah. As it started as it starts to sink in, Elayne thought her knees were going to buckle. Men had said the third woman would be dangerous, but Aviendha, wait, she said she with Rand and twitches to the knife. Yeah, because women are still human. Imagine that. And if you write them like actual humans, then you make a much more interesting story. Rant over. Uh, all right. Do you have any more thoughts on this? Is more this is more up your alley with the first sistering and the sharing.
Well, I mean, again, we have to account for culture here, but this one takes it out of my alley because it's not a philosophical question if there's a thing called fate. Then it becomes this is what has to be. And because we have a min vision to go along with it,
Hmm.
it's a little bit different. Now they have to navigate that through culture, but it's still it's not it ceases to be a very secular hormone driven event versus the pattern was woven in this way.
Yeah, but is it fate or is men just telling you this is the way it is? This is the way it's going to be. That there are going to be three women that are going to be in love with Rand, and Rand is going to be in love with them. So if you want them, you're going to have to share them.
Well, the twitch towards the knife, had that been a man, Avienda would be dead, right? Well, let's go to suicide, right? Women attempt suicide way more than men, but men complete the action way more than women.
Hmm.
And that's a situation there. She thought about it, but she didn't complete the action because she is a woman, which is probably why polygamous societies, not just for resources and the fact that in warring civilizations there typically is less men than women because they go and die, but the agreeableness, the collaboration between women and the way they do things, and the less propensity to actual physical violence towards each other actually works. Because now we've just got to basically justify in our own heads how this can work because I
Hmm.
didn't kill you. I didn't go into a fit of rage and jealousy and kill you. I'm still jealous, but how do we make this work best?
Hmm. Da, 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 da.
And women do tend to form coalitions. And what better coalition than a sister wife situation? The one thing you normally would fight about, you're not fighting about. So now everything else is pretty much open game to work together on.
Um, I do like how the chapter ends. Is anything in life ever simple, Aviana? Not when men are involved, which is great because we get that sentiment frequently with the boys
Mm-hmm.
talking about women. All right, let's pause a second. Because I need water because my throat is still angry at the weather. And then we get into random men. All right. So, chapter 41. Min finally comes back into the story. Uh,
Huzzah.
Huzzah, because Rand definitely needs it. Um, uh, I like that he sets everything up with several pages of Min's point of view of, everything she's thinking going up to the palace, but then he switches to Rand so that we get to see Rand's kind of obliviousness uh, to her uh, to her feelings for him.
I just had a thought back to what you said about The if this is just what Min said was gonna happen, she never said he would actually be with three women. She said
That's
three
true.
women would love him and he would love three women.
She specifically said that that wasn't part of her vision, that she didn't know
Mm-hmm.
that.
So they're at this impasse where they have a choice to make. They either fight over him, which would lead to two things. First of all, two of the three not being part of the story at some point, but the other downstream effect is what is that going to do to Rand? Because now he's got to choose, and that leaves open the possibility of not choosing any instead of choosing all three. Well, I can't choose between them, so I will say no to all of them. And what would that have done to Rand?
Mhm. Well, we kind of see it here uh eventually. Um when he gets to talking about um Elayne and Aviendha, so 743, Min gives her Elaine's letter, and he asks if women try to drive men crazy or if it's just something they do. And then he goes off on this rambling talk about how much he likes Elayne and Aviendha and why he does, but also why they drive him bonkers.
I love how she ends that letter. I love her like a sister, and I hope you love her as I do. Is that is that a little backhanded? I hope you start to love her as a sister.
Could be a little politicking.
Yeah. She said
Uh,
he would love her. He didn't say how he would love her.
exactly. Um, yeah, and so then he goes into his little spiel about how so 745, it hardly matters now anyway, it is done with. I sent Avienda away and I will not let her come back. I won't let myself within a mile of her or Lane, 10 miles if I can help it. For the love of why, Rand, what gives you the right to make a choice like that for them? Men, can't you see I am a target? Any woman I love becomes a target too. Rand, blah, blah, blah. Um, but this is what Rand needed, and really what I think helps him hold it together for as long as he has to before things get better, because she's the only she's the only one around him who treats him like a friend, who treats him like a human. For everybody else, he is either uh, an object to be opposed, an object to be manipulated, or an object to be followed. And he needs someone who will treat him like a person and tell him the kinds of things you have to tell a person in order to, you know, in order to keep them human. And so it kind of mirrors what's going on with Matt and Thom, that and now Rand in a very different kind of way, because it's a very different dynamic here, because it's not a mentor-mentee relationship. It's a friend-friend, but it's more than that, because you throw in the wrinkle of the opposite sex and sexual attraction.
Let's scoot a little bit back. What gives you the right to make a choice like that for them?
Mhm.
This is one of the double standards when it comes to men and women. Relationships about consent, right? If he says no, what does it matter the reason? She can say no for whatever reason. She could say no because I don't see a future with you, or you drool a little bit when you eat salad, or any reason in the world. But no is no. If he says no because of his thoughts about this, and it's going to make him unhappy knowing that they're in danger, it's still no. What is it their decision? That now
Mhm.
you're imposing your will on him.
Well, and they'd already kind of decided, Elayne and Aviendha just did it, but then when Elayne was talking to Min back in the previous book, when they first got together, and Elayne had figured out that you had a vision about Rand, and that's when it came out that, you know, yeah, there's three women and I'm one of them. Uh,
You can
they
make
had
the
kind of,
argument of they're not scared or they're willing to take the risk, but you can't say you're
yeah,
taking their choice from them.
because they've already taken his choice away from him because they have
Ex-
decided
yeah,
amongst themselves
exactly.
that
Yeah.
no, we're in this together. We don't know how it's going to work. We'll figure it out, but we're in this together, and neither one of us are going to give up on him. Uh, so we have to learn, and so we're going to learn to live with it. And he doesn't really have a choice
Mhm.
in the matter. Um, from her perspective, though, it's doubly wrong from her perspective because, as you pointed out earlier, it's the pattern. There's an element of fate here that you're denying, and she hasn't told him that. She's not gonna let him know that, but um, there's an element of fate that you're denying, but also you're denying them the right to try. That, who are you that if they you've already expressed these feelings for them, and if they return those feelings, then it's up to them of whether or not they're willing to accept the danger.
I don't agree with that because there is a toll on the person that
Hmm.
is putting them in danger as well.
Hmm.
I mean, they could physically get hurt and they could accept that risk, but he can also accept the risk, the fact that he doesn't want to take the psychological toll if something was to happen to them. We do it with our kids all the time, right? It's there is damage that can be
Hmm.
happen that could happen in so many different ways. And again, he has to consent to that part of the risk too,
Yes.
because it's never going to go. No matter how enthusiastic they are about risking their life, the fact that he could be the end of their life by proxy through someone trying to hurt him
Hmm.
will always weigh on him. And realistically, in his fragile state, especially with the psychological issues that come with being tainted, that could be a huge toll.
Hmm.
That could destroy the world toll.
Yeah. Uh, Read and find out way down the line at the end of the series. Anyway, um, I had a thought and I don't remember what it was. Oh well. Um, Dooby dooby doo for the other thoughts I had. Um, all right, and then we get to the politics of it of all right, why I'm here because I'm with this embassy and here's what's going on. Um, and she has a viewing that women who can channel are going to hurt him, but she doesn't know the details. She just knows um it might happen more than once. I think that's why it seemed all scrambled. Ugh. Um, I like that about you, Rand. You accept what I can do and what I cannot. You don't ask me if I'm sure or when it's going to happen. You never ask for more than I know. And that's got to be a big deal to her since uh for Moraine, she was an asset. She
Mm-hmm.
was a tool. And well, she was an asset. For Swan Sanche, she was a tool. And Swan never gave her that benefit of the doubt, never gave her that treatment, and it drove her a little bonkers.
Well, and we
So,
got that back to back with him asking her a pointed question and she just says no. And in his head, he says he likes that about her because she never tries to evade.
Hmm.
So you have these complementary traits going with each other here.
That they're not getting elsewhere. And
Mm-hmm.
so it is a
In
very
fact, not only not getting elsewhere, getting the complete opposite
yeah.
everywhere they turn.
So it is a very subtle establishment of why there is going to be a relationship here. Why we the reader know this is leading just because we see the signs, we've seen it from Min's perspective, and we know the tropes that this is leading to a romantic relationship.
And which I think is maybe Jordan did this on purpose, maybe it was an accident, but I think it's fun that the most natural relationship he gets into is the one that was fated from the beginning, or that knew that it was fated from the beginning,
Way back at the beginning.
from
Yeah.
first sight. It
Like,
wasn't love at first sight. It was, oh God, I'm going to love him at
yeah,
first sight. I don't even like him right now.
like
And
chapter 10ish of the series. 10 to 15, somewhere in there, I think is when they get to Byerlawn.
but the way
Um,
the relationship plays out is the most normal and natural.
mhm. In large part because she's the most normal and natural. Like Elayne is a storybook romance. It's the princess and the farm boy, right? Um, Aviendha, I don't even know what you would call that. That to me is the
Well,
one that's
it's cross cultural, which you're not supposed to speak
cross-cultural.
about these days,
Uh,
but you have to account for other cultures.
it,
Imagine going to Japan and meeting a girl. You've spent time in Japan.
mhm.
You know how different everything is. You would have had to make a lot of adjustments to win over her family, to whatever you needed to do. Whereas in America, if you met a Japanese girl that grew up here all her life,
Mhm.
there would be very small steps you had to take.
So you do have that exoticism, which I guess is taboo now. We're not supposed to talk about. Uh, you also have the odd couple opposites attract element of it too, as well, I think. Um, gee, it's kind of like moonlighting, where they're yelling and slamming the doors, and then they hook up.
Well, that's where it's not opposites attract. That's where it's the same pole on a magnet repels
Mm.
itself, right? So they're just squishing together the same pole. They're actually the most
Giggity.
similar. Well, you can sleep pole to pole or hole to hole, but not pole to hole. No, but it's the fact that they're so much alike.
That's a good point that I had not considered. They're so much alike, but they can't see it because of that cultural difference.
Well, culturally different, but so they're the two most stubborn people in these books.
Mm,
Everybody talks about
that's
Two
true.
Rivers stubborn, but Rand makes Two Rivers look agreeable.
Hmm. That's a good point. And then you have Min, who's just the small town girl from a mining town. She has, you know, she's the kind of girl that he could have met had his life gone differently. And
Mm-hmm.
kind of one of those uh other
She's the girl
worlds
next door.
vision.
She's
Exactly.
she's what made Playboy huge, right? The girl next door, the girl that you're like, ooh, I can imagine that was the girl I work with in my office, or
Mhm.
the person I pass at the Starbucks every day, or
In one of those alternate universes that actually was part of the vision is that he left the two rivers uh and had his stuff stolen in Barrelon and met this crazy girl who told him all kinds of crazy things about himself. So he could have bumped into her and been the girl next door in another life, and that's what you're seeing and how it works. Oh, and then we get Sulin, which is fun. Uh, still wearing a dress and being a servant. Um, yeah, So 749, we get a little we get a little more illness kind of reinforcing what we saw with Aviendha. Why should any but Aviendha wish to harm this woman? She gave too much time to dreaming over you and not enough teaching you what you should know. Um, all right. I like that when Elayne comes in and Min kind of accidentally blurts out a viewing that she then um where was it? Min did get up then, giving him a look he knew all too well. It was his fault for some reason that she had let her secret slip.
Well,
Um,
it might have been Tavern kind of thing. People say things when they didn't want to,
that's true. That's true.
and it does
Uh,
lead to things that help the pattern go forward.
well, and she was cuddling with him, so kind of just absent-mindedly letting her mind wander because she wasn't paying attention to what was going on. Um, I like that. I like the way the wise ones. She has to keep her secret around the Aes Sedai, and yet the wise ones just kind of automatically accept her as a kind of honorary apprentice type because of this ability. Because to them, as Mullane says, it's like interpreting the dream without dreaming.
Well, and this is one thing that's different with them than the West. They have dreamers that can't channel. Whereas in the West, it seems to have culled down to anything
Mm.
miraculous is around channelers, which is probably a self-fulfilled prophecy because they just don't even look for it around anybody that's not a channeler. They're so stuck in the White Tower. I think one of the comments from the last video was how over time incompetent the Aes Sedai became because of their own arrogance, that
Mhm.
they're the special ones. And in Aiel culture, it never got there because they acknowledge people's gifts all around the board.
Yeah, how many now they do
Well,
say that old
that's
things are
cultural
coming
too,
back
because
again.
every hold has a wise one instead of all the wise ones being in one place.
That's true. That's a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
Big difference.
It creates the intimate relationship that you would discover these things with people.
Um, I don't really care that much about the politics that they get into, but I do like again the things we're not allowed to talk about. Uh
Isn't it just the last episode where I said, well, I didn't care about that part because it was political, and you were like, that's why I love it.
yeah, but can't really can't really get into it until kind of the culmination of some of the political stuff. Because he's setting stuff up. Um, but more men women goodness that is problematic now and why Jordan has to be canceled. So 752 uh Mullane leaned closer to Min and spoke in a whisper that could have been heard in the next room. Min always faint, and always at the worst possible time, Min agreed in the same tone. What would they think if they could have seen him in Matt's father's barn, blood and birthing fluids to his shoulders, and three ribs cracked where he had been kicked because the mayor had never foaled before and was frightened? Uh, I will say though, it is different when it is your spouse and your child.
I don't know.
It
I
is,
was there for mine, and she had a C-section, and I didn't think it would look like this at all. They made the incision, Nurse put her hands out like that. Doctor got up on belly and went. He squirted it out.
Nurse have a catcher's mitt on. Hey!
It was. I'm
Well,
not even exaggerating. It was kind
well,
of wicked.
I was there, but I'll tell you what I said when I don't remember if it was my mom or my sister who asked if I watched. I said, "Shoot, no, I eat at that restaurant." So I was there having my hand broken.
But oh no, because it was a C-section, she had all the fancy drugs. So
Woo.
no squeeze hand needed.
All right. Um, not quite sure where to start. Well, chapter 44 is when it goes back to Matt, so we don't want to get into that. Um, chapter 43, we see the
You skipped the Black
shenanigans.
Tower.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the Black Tower. I don't really. All right, so the end of that chapter for sure is because we just talked about the Aes Sedai arrogance, and so they argue. You get Time's creepiness of wanting to call the Aes Sedai numbers, so to speak, because as he puts it, 11 is a dangerous number. Rand laughed in spite of himself, saying, "I intend to teach them to dance to my flute." Um, Light, how long since he had played the flute? Where was the flute? Faintly, he heard Lews Therin chuckling, because Lews Therin knows a thing or two about the pitfalls of arrogance.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I don't know if we've seen those raving rants of his before, but I think we have
I think
of
we
him,
have, yeah.
yeah, thinking about his arrogance and what it caused. Um, have we? When did we find out that the whole Aes Sedai not sweating thing was had nothing to do with the power and was just a trick of concentration?
I don't remember.
Because it's explicitly said here, uh, when Rand asks, "Why don't you teach the women the trick of concentrating?" and Time says they want no part of it because they think it might have something to do with Sidon. Um, there is an interesting exchange here in Rand's head on 765 between Rand and Lews Therin. Oh, we get a comment about red sisters in the countryside. That was just a little nugget way back that I don't remember when in one of the Elida point of view chapters, last book, I think. But then I find this interesting. "I will kill him," Lews Therin shouted, and Rand felt that fumbling reach towards Sidon. "Go away," he said firmly. The fumbling continued, and so did the voice. "I will kill him and then them. They must serve him. It is plain they must serve him." "Go away," Rand shouted back silently. "You are nothing but a voice," stretching towards the source. "Oh, Light, I killed them. I killed them all that I loved. If I kill him, it will be well, though. I can make it up if I kill him finally. No, nothing can make up, but I must kill him anyway. Kill them all. I must, I must." So is Lews Therin convinced that every male channeler is a servant of the dark?
Mm, I wouldn't say that because he didn't do that around some of the younger guys in the camp or even when he was testing them.
It
He
does
only
seem,
does he only does it with Tame.
yeah, It does seem to be around time, especially if he's solo.
Mhm.
If it's one on one, then especially so, which I find interesting.
Well, part of that is probably the similarities to a certain other person,
Hmm.
just in look and arrogance.
Yep. But the I know this isn't the first time. I don't remember exactly the first time where he felt Luz Theron reaching for the source, but this is definitely an escalation. And makes for some interesting questions of, all right, so Luz Theron is an entirely separate entity inside his head, or is Rand just that far gone that the raving voice in his head, that Rand can be reaching for the source and feel like it's the raving voice in his head. And then chapter 43, Min is eyeballing the um Min is eyeballing the Aes Sedai who are out scheming is how it ends. Although Varen and Alana come back into it, which adds an additional wrinkle.
Yeah, changes 11 to 13.
Hmm. And they're commenting on Rand's arrogance while they're arrogantly scheming behind his back because he clearly doesn't know what he's doing, and we'll just ignore what possible mess we could make by hinting to different nobles that we will back them. And if they all think that they have the backing of Aes Sedai, then what kind of mischief might they get up to? Ah, well, that's a problem for later us. We'll fix it then because we're Aes Sedai.
Yep.
All right, and we'll end it there because chapter 44 is one of my favorite chapter titles because it is so cynical. The color of trust and then where that comes from, and we will delve into that next time. Because it gets back to Matt, and then Perrin finally shows up. And now, did we have any spoiler talks, or are we just going to get into comments?
Let's start with the comments and see if anything pops up.
Yeah, because I can't. The only spoilery things I kind of thought of are we'll get there next time or the time after anyway. Um, Let me find.
We addressed this first one. Salidar is the textbook example of why the Aes Sedai are so ineffectual throughout this age's history. And I think what we touched on as the major theme of that is they're so isolated. They're not out there.
Mhm.
They're not in the world. I should
Yeah,
say
they.
intimate with the world because they are out in the world, but they're doing things secretly. And instead of, you have a village wisdom, but you know,
Mhm.
every major area having some sort of Aes Sedai access to where you can know them as people
Yeah,
and
not
they know who you are.
and not even all areas have a wisdom because depending on where you are, that can smack too much of the power, and then you have to deal with,
Well, I was going to say the exception would be Amadicia, but
and
Amadicia's power would actually be reduced if the rest of the West were comfortable with Aes Sedai.
Mhm.
It's their discomfort with the tower that
Yeah,
gives the White Cloak so much power.
well, Tyr as well because they don't like anything to do with the power because of the prophecies.
True,
Um,
true.
So
Except that
we,
they would have understood the power dynamic that having that in your country would have given
mhm,
Ilian.
yeah.
It would have been
Uh,
a begrudgingly, we'll let you do this. Just
and
cross your T's and dot your I's.
the Aes Sedai who do get out into the world because of their kind of self-imposed caste system, you're focused on a particular task. So if you're gray, you're out in the world because you're negotiating, and that's what you care about. If you're a brown, you're just looking for knowledge, and that's all you care about. And if you're a blue, you're you're looking for information. You're basically an espionage agent because you want to know what's going on so that your particular cause can best be advanced. So there's no one putting it all together, which is
Mhm.
ideally, ostensibly, what the sitters should be doing. Of here's what our people, our colors is saying. Here's what we're seeing, and let's put it all together. But they don't. They just it reinforces the factions rather than letting the factions help the whole.
Well, I talked about women in coalitions. That's not a universal thing. They're cliquish. They
Hmm.
make coalitions, but then there's a super in group, out group within groups that happens. And that's what we see with the tower because it's run by women.
Hmm. I do like the comment about Aes Sedai being witches, which is something they're called, especially by white cloaks. But I had forgotten that one of the um, tropes, accusations, possibly true, I don't know, that when covens of witches get together to perform their rituals, they do so naked.
Well, I mean, and that goes even to our religious discussions. There is a connection in our psyche between nakedness and nature because clothes are that step away from nature. It protects us from it, but it's also just that what makes us human is we have
Hmm.
this modesty kind of mindset.
So I agree with Scott here, but I'm not quite sure why about um how much better would the Caemlyn storyline have gone if Elayne headed out to Andor immediately instead of all the distractions? I admit the importance of the Bull story, but the interminable delays made the Caemlyn story much more difficult. Not just much more difficult, but I always felt like
It was
re
forced in the end.
for reasons I can't quite put my finger on, that it made it feel anticlimactic. It felt like, you know, we the Ibudar storyline takes up so much time and to his point is so important. And then we get to
Well,
Caemlyn and it's
well, and
okay,
to
well
add to
now we're
his
in
point,
Caemlyn.
Elayne really wasn't important to the Ibudar storyline. Matt, uh, the only reason excuse me, Elayne was important was Birgitte was there.
Hmm.
Uh, but she could have sent her warder to do anything. So protect Nynaeve in this, I have to go to Caemlyn, so protect
Hmm.
Nynaeve. So we could have still had that, but then you wouldn't have had the Birgitte basically being the surrogate Lenny for Elayne while she was doing the Caemlyn stuff.
Hmm.
So you sacrifice one of those, but realistically, from a why you had to be there thing, she was just another channeler with a badass warder. So we would have lost our lovely scene with Matt and Brigitte, but we wouldn't have known what we were missing.
It
And
also
to the point of it,
feels
it would have made the other smoother. Now, where it does take away is part of the reason the Caemlyn storyline later was so, I guess, tumultuous was how long she was gone.
hmm.
If she goes back now, it's a smooth transition. And I think he didn't want that smooth transition. He wanted all these machinations to be
I was gonna
happening.
say it feels a little forced.
Yeah.
That Elayne is going here because I want things to be more messy when she gets back to Caemlyn.
Hmm.
And it feels a little out of character. Is
See,
Elayne is all about duty. That's a big and yes, the bowl is important, but Nynaeve's going there. She's more powerful than you are. Um, you also have these others that are going along, and yes, they may be somewhat of a hindrance because they aren't close to Egwene like we are. They may have their own agendas, but they are also um experienced Aes Sedai that can help with all the other things that have to go on. And Egwene is very duty focused and very Andor focused.
mhm.
For her to because she has to know what's going to be going on in her absence.
Not only that, what one alternate storyline that I had in my head until he M Night Shyamalan me and went a different direction was that because of the geographical placement of everything, I thought she was going to accidentally reunite with her mother until he totally pushed that into the Perrin storyline,
Hmm.
which
Hmm.
which was part of the reason the Perrin storyline started falling apart because that whole situation was so annoying.
Hmm.
I thought something in Salidar or Amadicia in that area was going to push Elayne and her together, which would have been a good way to get back to Caemlyn. As
And you still could have had the awkwardness, the difficulties that have to be overcome because now
everybody knows Morgase is alive.
yes,
Yeah.
and you get that later, but it's almost brushed over, and it's not that simple. It's everyone knows Morgase is alive now or is going to find out, but she has abdicated her throne. She's going to still feel like the queen, but Elayne is now the daughter heir, the rightful ruler because you abdicated. She's also a full Aes Sedai now.
Hmm.
So you're going to have an awkward dynamic there with the mother who has now been surpassed by the daughter in terms of authority.
When you could still have the secession issues if you had that reuniting and then going to Caemlyn, because the fallout from the things that happened under Morgase's watch
Hmm.
could have started a secession in and of itself.
And actually would have been more likely to bubble to the surface and explode if Morgase was there.
Hmm.
You know, you caused this, you're still there. Your 18, 19-year-old daughter is just going to be your puppet anyway. Yeah, I feel like that would have made some things go a lot better. Mostly on the parent side.
Let's see. Matt wants to avoid Aes Sedai. Yeah, that is the one of the major reasons he doesn't want to go. But again, he'll do. This is where I had to renege on my agreeableness because he does follow the orders. He just kind of
Hmm.
gives his opinion on the way out the door.
Yeah.
Uh, let's see. Losing yourself in Chela or in Riyadh in the flesh. Wise ones are unreal. Yeah, they are half trained according to
Yeah,
the Forsaken. But at the same time, we don't know how much the Forsaken are losing of themselves. We could be talking about a psychological loss, not a physical loss.
true. Yeah. I know I think we talked about that when we because I remember way back we went into detail and I thought we had come up with some ideas of what that was, but it is also true that the wise ones don't necessarily know what they're talking about,
Mhm.
or they could only be partially right.
And there could be a truth to it being a difference between men and women
Hmm.
because we know the male Forsaken do it all the time. But I do believe Mohidian it was a dreamer. Lanfear was a dreamer.
Lanfear was a very powerful dreamer, yeah.
Yeah. So, and it never mentions anything about the other ones. So it could be a male female difference too.
It's a good point. All the dreamers we know about, even when we see some flashbacks, like in Rand's walk through the columns, in one of the scenes, uh, one of his ancestors is talking to his wife, asking if she had had a dream. So the indication being that that Aiel was a dreamer and not a channeler.
Hmm.
So really all the dreamers we know about are women. It may be a female talent,
Well, except for the wolf dream.
except for the wolf dream, which is, yep, different thing. All right, well, that's all I got. Um, like I said, the other kind of spoilery things, that's all coming here pretty quick in the next couple of chapters anyway.
Yep. Anything we want to tease for next time?
We'll see how far we can go
Well, I meant for
to
the
get
the
through.
Tuesday episode.
Tuesday, I have no idea. I have not been paying attention to what's going on purpose, so I don't know what we want to get into.
Okay, well, I'll keep looking through my sources, and there's, I mean, obviously always new COVID stuff coming out as far as inoculations and what spike protein does in the system, and actually some possible really good interventions. That's the next step, right? We know
Mhm.
this is happening, and we know 70% of the 330 million people in this country have taken something. And even if it is rare, as we have to say, that's still a lot of people.
It's a
So,
Detroit Lions player that dropped dead like last week. Former
oh,
player. I don't know if he was active, but he was only in his mid-20s. Just died
well,
suddenly.
well,
There's
JJ
something
Watt
going
just
around.
retired, and he's talking about his baby, but he also just had cardiac issues where he had to be inverted in the hospital in October. So there is a secondary factor that may go into this, and nobody wants to talk ill of JJ Watt because he's the golden boy
Mhm.
of the NFL. But in in performance enhancement injections can also cause hypertrophy of the left ventricle, which would cause rhythm issues as well. Uh, so there are other factors, but something has to come out because it's not genetic.
Which would be which I would assume if you introduced another element that could do that, then you would have a compounding uh risk.
You could, but at the same time, if I was someone in his shoes, I would be first and foremost with the inoculation argument because I would not want it to come out that I was doing other things
Hmm.
because that would tarnish my legacy before I'm in the Hall of Fame.
Hmm.
Mm, but that's just me.
Maybe we'll dive deep there. All right. Well, we will see y'all next time.
All right, later.